Introduction: The price of conformity and the power of discipline. In every age, society has been shaped by two invisible yet powerful forces: the desire to belong and the struggle to rise above. The first draws us toward conformity, pushing us to follow the paths that most people walk. The second urges us to carve our own way, to create something unique, to live a life that is not a mere echo of the majority. Between these two forces lies the eternal tension of human existence. Shall we follow the crowd and remain ordinary, or shall we break away, take risks, and perhaps become extraordinary? The phrase, "Don't follow the crowd if you want to be outstanding," captures the essence of individuality and courage. History remembers not those who blended in but those who dared to be different. Socrates questioned the common beliefs of Athens and drank poison for his defiance, yet his thoughts shaped Western philosophy. Galileo challenged the crowd's conviction that the earth stood still, and though condemned, his name became synonymous with scientific revolution. Every great figure has, in some way, turned their back on the comfort of conformity. Yet courage alone is not enough. One may resist the majority, but without discipline, the inner structure collapses. A talent without discipline is like a sword without sharpening, impressive in form, useless in battle. Without discipline, every talent is meaningless. Discipline transforms sparks into flames, potential into achievement. It is the quiet force behind every symphony, every invention, every victory. This essay will explore the marriage of these two truths: that greatness requires both the courage to walk away from the crowd and the discipline to master oneself. Through philosophical reflection, stories of fictional characters, and lessons drawn from history, we will see why the path of distinction is narrow, why the crowd resists difference, and why discipline is the bridge between vision and reality. The journey begins not with rules, but with questions. Why do people follow the crowd? Why is it so difficult to stand apart? And what role does discipline play in lifting us from ordinary to extraordinary? Let us walk through these questions together. Philosophical reflections: why the majority chooses the easy path. If one observes human society carefully, a curious truth emerges: most people are not searching for truth, greatness, or distinction. Instead, they are searching for comfort, security, and approval. The crowd, the majority, often selects the path of least resistance, because it feels safe, predictable, and socially rewarded. The psychology of the crowd. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once remarked that the greatest danger to individuality is not persecution but comfort. To follow the crowd means to surrender the burden of decision-making. When we walk with the majority, we no longer need to think deeply, nor take responsibility for being wrong. If everyone does it, then it must be right, or at least safe. Psychologists call this social proof, the tendency of individuals to imitate the behavior of the majority, assuming that the group must know better. A person who doubts himself finds reassurance in the multitude. Yet history has shown, again and again, that the majority can be wrong, sometimes catastrophically wrong. The majority once believed the earth was flat. The majority once believed slavery was natural. The majority once resisted electricity, vaccination, and even women's right to education. The crowd is not inherently evil, but it is inherently conservative. It resists change, because change demands risk. And risk, to the average mind, feels threatening. The comfort of the herd. Imagine a field of sheep grazing under the watch of a shepherd. Each sheep feels safe, not because it is strong, but because it is surrounded by others. Safety is found in numbers. Yet this safety is an illusion, for when the wolf comes, the crowd offers no protection, it merely provides a larger meal. In much the same way, humans seek comfort in conformity. To stand out means to invite criticism. To be different means to bear the weight of misunderstanding. That is why so many gifted individuals bury their talents in order to avoid the pain of rejection. But herein lies the paradox: the crowd admires those who dare to leave it. The same majority that discourages difference secretly envies the courage of the few who walk away. People who conform are forgotten, people who resist are remembered. The burden of originality. To not follow the crowd is not merely a physical act, it is a philosophical stance. It means choosing truth over acceptance, meaning over comfort, and long-term growth over short-term pleasure. It means asking, what is right, instead of, what is popular? This burden can be heavy. Socrates was executed for questioning Athenian traditions. Jesus was crucified for challenging religious and political norms. Galileo was imprisoned for defending heliocentrism. Each of these figures saw what the crowd could not, and each paid the price of originality. Yet centuries later, it is not the crowd we remember, it is them. Example, the tale of Adrian, the young inventor. Consider the fictional story of Adrian, a young inventor in a small town. From childhood, Adrian loved building machines from scraps of metal. His dream was to create a flying vehicle, something no one in his village believed possible. The villagers laughed at him. "Why waste your time?" they said. "No one needs such nonsense. Be practical, be like us." Even his parents urged him to give up his dreams and work on the family farm. But Adrian refused to follow the crowd. He worked alone, late into the night, studying designs, experimenting, and failing repeatedly. His peers mocked him as a fool. Yet one day, after years of solitude and discipline, Adrian's machine lifted off the ground. The same crowd that once ridiculed him now gathered in awe. The boy who defied the majority became the man who changed his village forever. The lesson from Adrian's story is clear: the crowd chooses comfort, but progress belongs to those who choose discomfort. To be outstanding is to embrace the loneliness of the path less traveled. Discipline as the foundation of greatness. If refusing to follow the crowd is the first step toward distinction, then discipline is the bridge that transforms difference into excellence. To stand apart without discipline is to drift into chaos, to have talent without discipline is to waste potential. Discipline is the structure that gives wings to freedom. Talent versus discipline. Many people admire talent. We celebrate the child who plays the piano flawlessly at age 5, the athlete who runs faster than his peers, or the student who solves complex equations effortlessly. Yet talent alone is fragile. Without discipline, talent becomes a fleeting spark, a momentary flame that dies before it can light the world. History is filled with forgotten geniuses, brilliant minds who never produced lasting work because they lacked the discipline to persist. On the other hand, there are countless examples of ordinary individuals who, through sheer discipline, achieved greatness far beyond what natural talent could have promised. The Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Discipline is precisely this: the ability to govern oneself, to resist distractions, and to persist even when motivation fades. The nature of discipline. Discipline is not punishment, it is training. Just as a soldier trains his body to obey commands, so must an individual train his mind and habits to serve his higher goals. Discipline transforms time into a ladder. Each small, repeated effort becomes a step upward, until one reaches heights that seemed impossible at the beginning. It is said that motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. Motivation is emotional, it rises and falls like the tide. Discipline is structural, it stands like a lighthouse, unshaken by storms. Fictional example, Elena the painter. Elena was born with an extraordinary gift for painting. As a child, her drawings astonished everyone in her village. Teachers predicted she would become famous one day. But Elena grew lazy, relying on her talent alone. She painted only when she felt inspired. Months, sometimes years, passed without a single finished work. Meanwhile, her friend Marco had no special gift. His early paintings were clumsy and unimpressive. But Marco practiced every day, setting aside 2 hours no matter how tired he was. He studied techniques, copied the masters, and forced himself to paint even when he had no inspiration. 20 years later, Marco's works hung in galleries across Europe. Elena, once considered a prodigy, had nothing to show but half-finished sketches. The contrast between Elena and Marco demonstrates the brutal truth: talent sets the stage, but discipline writes the play. Real example: athletes and musicians. Consider athletes like Michael Jordan. Many believe Jordan was simply born great. In truth, he was cut from his high school basketball team for not being good enough. What made him great was his relentless discipline, arriving earlier, training longer, and pushing harder than anyone else. His talent alone would not have carried him to 6 NBA championships; it was discipline that did. Similarly, world-class violinists are not merely gifted. Studies show that the best performers are those who spend over 10,000 hours in deliberate practice. The discipline of daily repetition, not just natural talent, produces mastery. Discipline as freedom. At first glance, discipline may seem like restriction, like a prison of routine. Yet paradoxically, discipline is the highest form of freedom. The disciplined writer is free to create books, while the undisciplined dreamer remains enslaved by procrastination. The disciplined athlete is free to win championships, while the undisciplined one is shackled by wasted potential. Freedom without discipline is chaos. Discipline without freedom is tyranny. But freedom combined with discipline is greatness. Conclusion of this chapter. To resist the crowd requires courage. To resist oneself requires discipline. Courage sets you apart from others, discipline sets you above yourself. The harmony of these two forces, nonconformity and discipline, creates greatness that lasts beyond a lifetime. Stories and characters, illustrative journeys of nonconformity and discipline. Philosophy becomes alive not in abstract principles, but in the lives of men and women who embody them. To understand why we should not follow the crowd and why discipline is essential, let us walk through the stories of both fictional and real characters whose lives illuminate these truths. Story 1, Adrian the Inventor, the courage to defy the crowd. We met Adrian briefly in Chapter 2, but his journey deserves deeper reflection. Adrian's village lived in simplicity, relying on farming and traditional tools. Innovation was considered dangerous because it disrupted the balance of life. Yet Adrian, fascinated by the mechanics of nature, dreamed of creating machines that could fly. The ridicule he faced was immense. Children mocked him as the crazy builder. Elders warned him that chasing fantasies would bring shame to his family. Even his parents begged him to stop, fearing he would waste his youth. But Adrian persisted. His workshop became his temple of discipline. Every day, before sunrise, he studied mechanical drawings. He scavenged for scrap metal, tested designs, and endured countless failures. For 10 years, he worked in silence while his peers laughed. One summer evening, the impossible happened: his machine lifted into the sky. The same crowd that rejected him now applauded. Yet Adrian smiled not for their approval, but because he knew he had chosen truth over conformity. His discipline had turned ridicule into history. Adrian's story reminds us that the crowd resists dreamers, but in the end, it is dreamers with discipline who shape the future. Story 2, Lydia the Soldier, the discipline of self-mastery. Lydia was not born extraordinary. She was clumsy, weak, and shy. When she joined the army, many doubted she would survive basic training. Her peers laughed when she struggled to march in rhythm, when she failed to lift heavy equipment, and when she lagged behind during runs. In despair, she almost quit. But a mentor told her, discipline is stronger than strength. Train every day, and your weakness will become your weapon. Lydia obeyed. She woke earlier than the others, practicing drills alone before dawn. She repeated push-ups until her arms trembled, then repeated them again. She wrote down every mistake and forced herself to correct it. Years passed. The once weak soldier became a leader. In battle, it was her discipline, her ability to remain calm, precise, and relentless, that saved her unit. The crowd of fellow recruits, who once mocked her, now looked to her for guidance. Lydia's story teaches us that discipline is not natural talent, but the daily choice to rise above weakness. Real Story 1, Albert Einstein, Beyond Academic Failure. Einstein is often remembered as a genius born with extraordinary talent. Yet the truth is more complex. As a child, he spoke slowly and was considered dull. He failed the entrance exam to a polytechnic school. Many of his teachers believed he would never succeed. What set Einstein apart was not just his intellect but his refusal to accept conventional thinking. While most scientists accepted Newtonian physics, Einstein questioned it. His discipline was intellectual: years of rigorous thought experiments, endless papers, and sleepless nights of calculation. Had Einstein followed the crowd, he would have become a forgettable clerk. Instead, his disciplined originality gave us the theory of relativity, reshaping science forever. Real Story 2, Steve Jobs, The Discipline of Vision. Steve Jobs was not an engineer. By technical standards, he lacked the skill set of many computer experts. Yet Jobs possessed vision, the belief that technology could be not only functional but beautiful. At Apple, he resisted the crowd of companies producing generic computers. He insisted on discipline in design: every curve, every button, every detail had to meet his standard. He drove his team relentlessly, sometimes harshly, but always with disciplined focus on excellence. This refusal to follow the crowd, combined with his discipline in maintaining vision, created devices that transformed the world. The iPhone was not born from conformity but from the courage to defy norms and the discipline to perfect every detail. Story 3, Daniel the Writer, The Silent Discipline of Words. Daniel dreamed of being a writer. But like many, he feared rejection. He wrote a few pages, shared them with friends, and when they laughed, he stopped. Years later, he decided to change. Instead of waiting for inspiration, he set a strict routine. Every morning, before work, he wrote one page. Just one. Rain or shine, tired or energetic, he wrote. After a year, he had a book. After 5 years, he had several novels. His first works were clumsy, ignored by publishers. But his discipline sharpened his craft. By the 10th year, Daniel became a best-selling author. The crowd that once laughed now praised his talent. But in truth, it was not talent, it was discipline disguised as talent. Conclusion of stories. Adrian shows us the courage to stand against the crowd. Lydia shows us the power of training beyond weakness. Einstein and Jobs show us that originality plus discipline reshapes history. Daniel shows us that persistence, not inspiration, creates mastery. Together, these characters, real and imagined, illustrate the union of two truths: greatness requires both the courage to defy conformity and the discipline to endure the long road of mastery. Lessons for modern life, applying nonconformity and discipline in work, study, and leadership. The principles of resisting conformity and cultivating discipline are not abstract ideas for philosophers alone. They are practical truths that shape our careers, our studies, our relationships, and our leadership. To live differently is to act differently, and to act differently requires discipline. 1. In work, innovation over imitation. In the modern workplace, the majority often follow the safest path, doing just enough to keep their jobs, avoiding risks, and copying whatever has worked before. But the individuals who stand out are those who dare to question routines and improve them. A worker who follows the crowd may be secure, but he will never rise. A worker who dares to innovate, backed by disciplined effort, creates value that others cannot ignore. The employee who takes initiative, learning skills outside his job description, eventually becomes indispensable. The entrepreneur who refuses to copy competitors but instead builds something original may face initial ridicule, but discipline allows the vision to materialize into success. Lesson: do not fear being different at work. Fear being forgettable. Combine courage to propose new ideas with the discipline to execute them consistently. 2. In study, consistency beats genius. Students often admire the smart ones who seem to learn effortlessly. Yet intelligence without discipline often fades. The true achievers are not always the most gifted but the most consistent. A disciplined student who studies a little every day will surpass a talented but lazy peer. In the end, exams, projects, and knowledge reward persistence more than raw talent. Example: Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, famously said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." He failed thousands of times, but his discipline turned failure into stepping stones. Lesson: study not when you feel like it, but because you have committed to it. The crowd will procrastinate, but the disciplined learner will excel. 3. In leadership, standing alone when necessary. True leaders are not crowd pleasers. They do not simply mirror the majority's opinion but dare to make unpopular decisions for the greater good. A manager who follows the crowd avoids blame but never inspires. A leader who challenges the crowd, guided by discipline and vision, earns respect even from critics. Example: Abraham Lincoln faced immense opposition during the abolition of slavery. If he had followed the crowd, America might never have been transformed. His leadership demanded both the courage to stand against popular opinion and the discipline to pursue his vision relentlessly. Lesson: leadership is not about walking with the crowd but about guiding the crowd to a better path. Discipline ensures that leadership is not impulsive but consistent. 4. In personal life, choosing long-term growth over short-term pleasure. In daily life, the crowd often seeks immediate gratification, comfort, entertainment, and ease. But those who rise above choose delayed gratification, sacrificing present pleasure for future growth. The crowd spends evenings scrolling through social media, the disciplined person spends them reading or exercising. The crowd eats whatever brings instant satisfaction, the disciplined person chooses nutrition that builds long-term health. The crowd wastes weekends in idleness, the disciplined person invests them in learning, building, or creating. Lesson: each small daily choice separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. To not follow the crowd means to live differently when no one is watching. 5. The balance between nonconformity and discipline. Nonconformity without discipline becomes rebellion without results. Discipline without nonconformity becomes routine without progress. The true formula is the balance of both, the courage to be different, and the discipline to perfect that difference. This balance is rare. That is why extraordinary lives are rare. Yet every person has the ability to cultivate it, if only they choose. Conclusion of Chapter 5. In work, it is innovation over imitation. In study, it is consistency over raw talent. In leadership, it is vision over popularity. In personal life, it is growth over comfort. These lessons prove that the principles of resisting the crowd and embracing discipline are not lofty ideals but practical tools for success in the modern world. Conclusion: the synthesis and call to action. History whispers a consistent truth: those who follow the crowd remain in its shadow, but those who dare to stand apart illuminate the path for generations. Yet courage alone is fragile. It must be joined with discipline, for discipline is the iron frame that holds the vision steady when storms of doubt and ridicule arrive. We began with 2 principles. 1. Don't follow the crowd if you want to be outstanding. 2. Without discipline, every talent is meaningless. Together, these truths form the foundation of greatness. The crowd chooses safety, the extraordinary choose risk. The crowd seeks comfort, the extraordinary embrace struggle. The crowd waits for approval, the extraordinary follow conviction. The crowd starts with talent and loses it, the extraordinary sustain talent with discipline. From Adrian the inventor to Lydia the soldier, from Einstein to Steve Jobs, from Daniel the writer to countless unnamed individuals, the lesson resounds: the world does not reward conformity, it rewards courage and persistence. The price of following the crowd. Following the crowd may feel safe, but safety is often mediocrity in disguise. The majority will never produce greatness because greatness, by definition, is rare. To follow the crowd is to choose the average, the ordinary, the forgettable. The power of discipline. Discipline, though difficult, is the daily act of self-mastery. It is the art of saying no to distractions, of choosing what is meaningful over what is easy. Discipline is not glamorous, but it is transformative. It is the quiet, invisible labor that later appears as talent or luck to those who do not understand. A call to action. The question is not whether greatness is possible. It is whether you are willing to pay the price. Are you willing to walk away from the crowd? Are you willing to endure the loneliness of being misunderstood? Are you willing to build discipline when no one is watching, to persist when no one applauds? If the answer is yes, then know this: the path will be hard, but it will also be meaningful. The world remembers not the conformists but the creators, not the complacent but the disciplined, not the majority but the few. Final reflection. Do not fear standing apart. Fear blending in. Do not worship talent. Worship discipline. Do not ask what the crowd thinks. Ask what is true, what is right, and what is worth your life. For in the end, greatness is not given, it is forged. It is forged in the courage to resist the crowd, and in the discipline to resist yourself. And when your story is told, let it not be said that you followed the crowd and vanished, but that you stood apart, endured, and left a mark that time could not erase.